The wind had teeth. It came screaming across the Montana plains like a living thing, clawing at the log cabin walls with fingers of ice and fury. The boards groaned under the assault, creaking like old bones in a shallow grave. Snow drove sideways against the windows, piling in drifts that climbed halfway up the walls. The world outside had disappeared into a white howling void. Inside, Sarah Brennan sat in darkness so complete she could not see her own hands. She had stopped lighting the oil lamp 3 days ago. Oil cost money. Money bought food. And there was no food left. The children were silent now. That was worse than crying, far worse. When children cried, at least you knew they still had the strength to protest their suffering. Silence meant something different. Silence meant surrender. 10-year-old Daniel lay curled against the far wall, knees drawn to his chest, arms wrapped around his own body for warmth that would not come. His breath came shallow and quick, visible in small white puffs even in the darkness. 7-year-old Mary had stopped asking for water yesterday morning. She lay beside her older brother, eyes open but unseeing, staring at nothing. 4-year-old Tommy whimpered in his sleep, a sound so small and broken it made Sarah's chest physically hurt. Each tiny cry felt like a knife twisting between her ribs. Sarah herself had not eaten in 4 days. 4 days of watching the children grow weaker. 4 days of searching the cabin for anything, anything at all that might sustain them. She had scraped frost from the windows and melted it for water. She had boiled leather scraps from an old boot, trying to extract some nutrient, some substance. The children had managed to choke down a few spoonfuls before their stomachs rejected it. Their last real meal had been 2 days ago. Half a loaf of bread, hard as stone, black with mold around the edges. Sarah had soaked it in melted snow until it softened enough to chew. She had divided it into 4 portions. 3 for the children, none for herself. She had watched them eat, forcing herself to smile, to pretend everything would be fine. It would not be fine. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to pray, but the words would not come. Her lips moved, forming shapes that once had meaning, but her mind was empty. God had not answered in 3 years. 3 years of praying for Michael to come home. 3 years of begging for relief, for mercy, for just enough to survive another day. And God had been silent, cold and distant as the stars. Why would he start listening now? December 1883, the 5th day of the blizzard. The worst storm Montana Territory had seen in living memory. They called it the year without summer, though by now it had stretched into 3 long years of drought and freezing death. 1880 had brought the drought. 1881 had brought failed crops. 1882 had brought the first brutal winter. And now 1883, the winter that would not end. Cattle froze standing up in the fields, their eyes glazed with ice. Men died in their beds, their breath simply stopping in the night. Entire families disappeared, found months later when the snow melted, huddled together in their cabins, frozen solid. And widows like Sarah learned that hope was a luxury, like oil for lamps or bread for children. A thing you could not afford. The iron stove in the corner had gone cold 8 hours ago. Sarah had burned everything, every stick of furniture she could spare. The chairs, the table, her mother's hope chest brought all the way from Boston, carved mahogany that had belonged to her grandmother. She had wept as she broke it apart with a hatchet, feeding the precious wood to the stove piece by piece. Even the bed frame, all of it consumed, transformed into heat that lasted only hours before the cold crept back in. The temperature inside the cabin hovered near 10 degrees below zero. Outside, the thermometer Michael had hung by the door read -25. If the wind chill was factored in, it was closer to -50. A temperature cold enough to freeze exposed skin in minutes, cold enough to kill. Sarah stood slowly, her legs trembling with weakness. She had to move. Movement created warmth. Movement meant she was still alive. She walked to the window, each step an effort of will. Her feet had gone numb hours ago. She pressed her palm against the glass. Ice crystals bloomed under her touch, spreading in delicate fractal patterns. Beautiful, deadly. 4 miles to the nearest neighbor, the Harlow family. Good people. But 4 miles might as well be 400 in this storm. Even if she could walk it, even if she did not freeze to death on the way, she could not leave the children. They were too weak to move, and she was too weak to carry them. Her hand fell to her side. She thought about Michael Cole, her husband, dead 3 years now, or so they said, killed in a mining accident at Granite Mountain, 40 miles north of here. No body recovered, just a letter from the foreman. Brief, cold, impersonal. We regret to inform you that your husband, Michael Cole, was killed in a cave on March 15th, 1880. The body could not be recovered. Our condolences. Sarah had not believed it at first. Could not believe it. Michael was too strong, too careful, too clever to die in a mining accident. He had promised her he would come home. He had promised her they would build a life together, a real life, on this land they had claimed under the Homestead Act. 160 acres of Montana territory, free and clear, if they could prove it up. Live on it for 5 years, build a house, cultivate the land. Then it would be theirs forever. They had been so close, but weeks became months, months became years. And the letter she sent to the mine went unanswered. The money Michael had promised to send never came. And slowly, Sarah understood the truth. Michael was not coming back. No one was coming. She and her children would die here, in this cabin Michael had built with his own hands, and spring would find them frozen together like some grotesque sculpture of desperation. She walked to the stove, knelt beside it. The metal was cold enough to burn, a deep, aching cold that penetrated her bones. She pried at the bottom plate with her fingernails, already cracked and bleeding from the cold. She searched for any coal dust, any scrap of fuel, anything that might burn for even a few more minutes. Her fingers found only ash, cold, dead, gray, and something else, paper. Frozen solid, wedged beneath the grate. Sarah's heart stuttered. She pulled at it, her numb fingers clumsy. It took 3 tries before she managed to work it free. An envelope, old, the edges water-stained. The ink faded but still legible in the faint moonlight that filtered through the frosted window. Her hands shook as she held it up. The handwriting was Michael's. She would know it anywhere. Bold, confident, slanting slightly to the right. The date in the corner, March 1880, nearly 4 years ago now, just days before his death. Her throat closed. She tore the envelope open with shaking hands. Inside, a single page folded twice. She unfolded it carefully, as if it might crumble to dust at her touch. The words swam before her eyes. She blinked, forcing them into focus. Sarah, my love, if you are reading this, I did not come home. I am sorry. I am so sorry. I have tried to be careful, but I fear my time is running out. Judge Frost knows what I discovered. He will not let me leave this mountain alive. I have asked my brother Ethan, the only man I trust with my life, to find you if I do not return. I have sent him a token, half of the silver dollar we split when I left for Montana. If I have not come home by the winter of 1883, Ethan will come. He may be late. He may take years to find you. But he will come. I know him. He keeps his promises, even when I cannot keep mine. Trust him as you trust me. He is my blood, my brother, and he will keep the promise I cannot. He will protect you. He will protect our children. He will finish what I started. I love you, Sarah. I love Daniel and Mary and our little Tommy, whom I have never met. Forgive me for failing you. Forgive me for not being strong enough to come home. Your husband, Michael James Cole. Sarah read the letter 3 times. Her vision blurred with tears that froze on her cheeks almost immediately. Ethan. Michael had a brother. In all their years together, Michael had mentioned him only once, in passing, late one night when the whiskey had loosened his tongue. A younger brother, 8 years younger. A soldier in the war. A boy who had seen too much death too young and never quite found his way back to the living. But why now? Why this letter hidden in the stove? Why had Michael known he would die? And why 1883 specifically? Before she could think further, Tommy cried out, a thin, desperate sound that cut through the silence like a blade. Sarah dropped the letter and rushed to him. She gathered the boy into her arms, feeling how light he had become. He weighed almost nothing. Bones wrapped in skin, nothing more. His face was pale, lips tinged blue. His eyes, when they opened, were glassy and unfocused. Mama, he whispered. His voice was so faint she had to lean close to hear it. I'm so hungry, Mama. Sarah held him tighter, pressing his face against her chest. I know, baby. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. His small hand clutched at her dress, fingers like twigs. Make it stop, Mama. Make it stop hurting. She rocked him, humming a tune she could barely remember. Her mother had sung it to her once, a lifetime ago, in a different world where children did not starve and winters did not kill. A world of warm kitchens and full bellies and laughter. A world that seemed impossibly distant now. Tommy's breathing slowed. His grip loosened. For a terrible moment, Sarah thought he had died in her arms. She shook him gently, panic rising in her throat. His eyes fluttered open. Still alive. Still here. She laid him back down beside his siblings, tucking the threadbare blanket around all three children. Daniel had not moved. Mary's eyes tracked her mother's movements, but she did not speak. Sarah stood, swaying, dizzy. She had not slept in 2 days, had not eaten in 4. Her body was consuming itself, burning muscle for fuel. How much longer could she last? Another day? 2? And then what? Who would care for the children when she was gone? She walked back to the window, pressing her forehead against the frozen glass. Outside, the storm showed no sign of stopping. The wind howled like a living thing, hungry and relentless. She closed her eyes, and then she heard it. A sound, faint, rhythmic, deliberate. 4 knocks, short, precise, military timing. Sarah's eyes snapped open. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She must be hallucinating. No one traveled in storms like this. No one could. It was suicide. The knocks came again. 4 beats, measured, patient, waiting. Sarah turned from the window. Daniel had woken, his eyes wide in the darkness. He sat up slowly, listening. Sarah crossed to the door. Her hand hovered over the latch. Every instinct screamed at her not to open it. Who would knock like that? Bandits? Thieves looking for easy prey? Men from the mine come to collect what Frost claimed she owed? Or something worse? But what did it matter? They were dying anyway. If someone wanted to rob them, let them. There was nothing left to take. She pulled the latch. The door exploded inward with a gust of wind and snow so fierce it knocked her back 3 steps. She raised her arm to shield her face, squinting against the onslaught of ice and wind. A man stood in the doorway, tall, well over 6 feet, broad-shouldered. His long coat was white with frost, ice crusted in the creases and folds. His face was obscured by a thick wool scarf wrapped around his nose and mouth. A wide-brimmed hat pulled low over his eyes. Snow clung to him like he had walked through the very heart of the storm itself and emerged on the other side. He did not ask permission to enter. He simply stepped inside and pushed the door closed behind him with one gloved hand. The wind fought him, but he was stronger. The door slammed shut, cutting off the howl of the storm. Silence fell, relative silence anyway. Sarah could still hear the wind outside, but it was muffled now, distant. She stumbled back, her legs hitting the edge of the cold stove. Daniel scrambled to his feet, putting himself between the stranger and his siblings. The boy's hands were empty, but his fists were clenched, ready to fight even though he could barely stand. The man raised his hands slowly, palms out, unthreatening. He stood still, letting them see he meant no harm. Then he reached up and pulled down his scarf. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The face was familiar, painfully, impossibly familiar. Not Michael's face, but close, so close it hurt to look at. The same strong jaw, square and stubborn. The same high cheekbones, the same gray-green eyes, the color of a winter sea. The same scar above the left eyebrow, though this man's scar was longer, deeper, more vicious. It ran from his hairline down to his temple, a pale line through weathered skin. He removed his hat, dark hair, thick and straight, streaked with silver at the temples despite his relative youth. 35 maybe, perhaps a bit older. His skin was deeply tanned, lined by wind and sun and years of hard living. Crow's feet at the corners of his eyes, a network of smaller scars on his hands and neck. He looked at Sarah. His eyes were steady, calm. The eyes of a man who had seen the worst the world had to offer and was no longer surprised by it. When he spoke, his voice was low and rough, like gravel underfoot, a voice that did not waste words. "Are you Sarah Brennan?" She could not speak. could not move. Her mind was screaming that this was impossible, that she was hallucinating from hunger and cold, that dead men did not have brothers who appeared out of blizzards. The man waited, patient. He did not repeat the question. Finally, Sarah managed a nod. Yes, I'm Sarah. The man's shoulders relaxed slightly. He pulled off his gloves, revealing hands that were scarred and calloused, the hands of a man who worked hard for his living. He tucked the gloves into his belt. My name is Ethan Cole, he said. I'm Michael's brother. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Her legs gave out. She caught herself on the wall, her vision swimming, black spots dancing at the edges. Ethan did not move to help her. He simply waited, giving her time to process. Michael, Sarah whispered. Michael is gone. He died 3 years ago. Ethan's expression did not change, but something flickered deep in his eyes. Pain, old and deep and carefully controlled. I know, he said quietly. I came too late, but I came. Sarah's gaze went to the badge on his coat. She had not noticed it before, but now she could see it clearly. Tarnished bronze, faded. The insignia of the Union Cavalry. 5th Regiment. You were in the war, she said. It was not a question. Ethan nodded once. Yes, ma'am. Behind him, through the gap in the doorway, Sarah could see a horse. A buckskin mare, sturdy and broad-chested, head down against the wind. The saddlebags were bulging, snow-crusted on the leather. Ethan turned to look at the children. Daniel was still standing, fists clenched, suspicious. Mary had crawled to Tommy's side, her thin arms wrapped around her baby brother. Tommy had not moved since his earlier crying. His eyes were closed. Ethan's face softened almost imperceptibly. He knelt slowly, bringing himself down to Daniel's eye level. The movement was careful, deliberate, non-threatening. You, Daniel? The boy's chin came up, his jaw set in a stubborn line that reminded Sarah achingly of Michael. Yes, Ethan studied him for a moment. Your father told me about you, said you were brave, said you looked after your mother and your brother and sister. Daniel's chin trembled. He bit his lip, hard, refusing to cry. Ethan reached into his coat and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. He held it out. For you. Daniel hesitated. Then he stepped forward and took the bundle, unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a piece of salt pork, small, maybe 4 ounces, but real, solid, food. Daniel stared at it, his hands shook. Go ahead, Ethan said. Eat it slow, your stomach's not ready for much. Daniel looked at his mother. Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. The boy lifted the pork to his mouth and took a small bite, chewed slowly, swallowed. His eyes closed. Ethan stood and walked past Sarah without waiting for permission. He moved through the cabin like a man who knew exactly what needed to be done. His eyes swept the room, taking in everything. The cold stove, the empty shelves, the thin blankets, the skeletal children. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He simply turned and walked back outside into the storm. Sarah heard the sound of the saddlebags being unloaded. Heavy thuds as things hit the snow. The horse's nervous whinny. Ethan's low voice soothing the animal. He returned carrying 2 large canvas bags, one over each shoulder. He dropped them on the floor with a thud and began unpacking with swift efficiency. Salt pork, a full slab, at least 5 pounds, cornmeal in a burlap sack, dried beans, a tin of coffee, 3 red apples, perfect and unblemished, a small jar of honey, and, wrapped carefully in layers of cloth, a live chicken, barely clucking, stunned by the cold but alive. Sarah stared. It was more food than she had seen in 6 months, more food than she had dared to hope for in her wildest dreams. Ethan ignored her shock. He walked to the stove, opened the door, examined the interior with a practiced eye. Then he went back outside again. Sarah heard him moving around, the sound of wood being split. When he returned, he carried an armload of split logs in a small leather pouch. He stacked the wood in the stove with the precision of long experience, pulled tinder from the leather pouch, struck flint to steel. The spark caught on a twist of dry bark. He blew on it gently, coaxing it to flame. Within minutes, fire licked upward, bright and hungry. The sound of crackling wood filled the cabin like music. Sarah sank to her knees. The sound, the blessed sound of fire. She had forgotten how beautiful it was. Ethan hung a cast iron pot from the hook above the fire. He went outside again, returned with a bucket, scooped snow into the pot, waited for it to melt. Then he added beans, chunks of salt pork, and a pinch of something from a small tin he produced from his coat pocket. The smell that rose from that pot was almost obscene in its richness, salt and fat and something savory. Sarah's stomach clenched so hard she doubled over, a whimper escaping her lips. Daniel crept closer, drawn by the scent like a moth to flame. Mary followed, dragging Tommy with her. All three children huddled near the fire, their eyes fixed on the pot. Ethan did not speak. He stirred the pot with a wooden spoon, waited, watched. The beans softened, the pork released its fat, the broth thickened. When it was ready, he ladled a small portion into a tin cup, tested it with his finger to make sure it was not too hot. Then he turned to Sarah. "You first." She shook her head weakly. "The children, they need it more." Ethan's eyes hardened. His voice became firm. "You first. If you collapse, I can't help them. You're no good to anyone if you're dead." Sarah opened her mouth to argue, but he stepped forward and pressed the cup into her hands. His fingers were warm, rough, calloused, strong. "Eat slow," he said. "Your stomach's not ready for much. Small sips, let it settle." Sarah brought the cup to her lips. The broth was hot, salty, rich with fat. She took one small sip. The liquid hit her stomach and her whole body convulsed. She gasped, tears streaming down her face. She took another sip, then another. The warmth spread through her, radiating from her core outward. Ethan watched her carefully. When she had drunk half the cup, he took it back gently. "Enough for now. Too much too fast and you'll be sick." He ladled another small portion, knelt beside Tommy. The boy's eyes were closed, his breathing shallow. Ethan touched his shoulder gently, carefully, as if the child might break. "Hey, kid." Tommy's eyelids fluttered but did not open. Ethan tried again, his voice softer. "I got something for you, something good." Tommy's eyes opened, just barely, glassy, unfocused. Ethan held the spoon to the boy's lips. The boy's mouth opened instinctively like a baby bird. "Zumain." Ethan tilted the spoon carefully. Broth trickled in. Tommy swallowed, his eyes opened wider. His tongue came out, licking his lips. "That's it," Ethan murmured. "Slow, just a little. There you go." He fed Tommy 3 spoonfuls. Then he moved to Mary, then back to Daniel. Small portions. Careful, controlled. He watched each child's reaction, gauging how much they could handle. Only when all 3 children had eaten, only when their eyes had regained some clarity and their breathing had steadied, did Ethan take food for himself. He sat on the floor with his back against the wall, eating directly from the pot with the same spoon, efficient and silent. Sarah watched him. This man, this stranger, this ghost of her dead husband who had walked out of a killing storm to save them. "Why?" she whispered. The word came out cracked, broken. "Why are you doing this?" Ethan did not look up from the pot. "Promise, Michael." "But he's gone. He's been gone 3 years. You don't owe us anything. You don't even know us." Ethan set the pot aside carefully. He reached into his coat and pulled out something small. A coin. He held it up to the firelight, turning it so she could see. A silver dollar. Morgan. Dated 1879. But broken. Snapped clean in half, the edge jagged. "Michael sent me this in 1880, Ethan said. His voice was measured, careful, as if he had rehearsed these words many times. "Right after he got to Montana. Sent it with a letter. Told me he'd married a woman from Boston. Said she was brave and beautiful and too good for him. Said they had a son and a daughter and a baby on the way. Said he was going to work in the mines for a year, make enough money to buy cattle and seed, then come home and build a life." He paused, staring at the broken coin. "The letter said if he didn't come back, someone would bring me the other half of this coin. And when they did, I was to go to Montana, find his wife, keep her safe, keep his children safe, no matter what it took." Sarah's hand went to her pocket. Slowly, with trembling fingers, she pulled out the other half. Michael's last gift to her. The coin he had broken in 2 before he left for the mine. She had carried it for 3 years, a talisman, a promise, a memory of better days. She held it up. Ethan stood, crossed to her in 2 strides, took the half from her trembling hand, fitted the 2 pieces together with the precision of a watchmaker. They matched perfectly. The break was unique, unmistakable. No question these 2 pieces had once been whole. But on Sarah's half, something was etched into the metal. 3 words, carved deep with a sharp tool, the letters rough but legible. Frost owes me. Ethan stared at the words. His jaw tightened. A muscle jumped in his cheek. When he looked up at Sarah, his eyes were hard as stone. Who is Frost? Sarah's voice was hollow, dead. Judge Clayton Frost. He owns the silver mine at Granite Mountain where Michael worked. He owns half the businesses in the territory. He owns the bank in Phillipsburg. And according to him, he owns this land too. Ethan's eyes narrowed. This land belongs to you. Homestead Act. If you've been here 5 years and improved it, it's yours. Sarah laughed, a bitter, broken sound that held no humor. Not according to Judge Frost. He says Michael borrowed money from him in 1880, $450, for equipment and supplies. Says Michael signed a contract using this land as collateral. I never saw the money. Michael never mentioned any loan. But Frost has papers, legal papers with signatures and seals. And if I don't pay by February 1st, he takes the land. How much time? 45 days. Ethan was silent for a long moment. Then he folded the 2 coin halves together carefully and slipped them into his pocket. He walked to the door, looked out at the storm through the gap. The wind had died down slightly. The snow was falling straight now instead of sideways. Stars were visible through gaps in the clouds. Sarah watched him. You don't have to stay. This isn't your fight. You don't owe me anything. You came. You brought food. That's more than I had any right to expect. You can leave in the morning and no one would blame you. Ethan turned. The firelight cast shadows across his face, making the scar on his temple stand out in sharp relief. For a moment he looked older, harder, dangerous. Then he spoke, and his voice was quiet but absolute. Michael saved my life at Antietam. September 1862. I was 14 years old. Too young to be there. But Michael brought me anyway. Lied about my age, said I was his son. We got separated in the fighting. A Confederate sharpshooter had me pinned down behind a stone wall. I couldn't move, couldn't run. Every time I tried, he'd put a bullet inches from my head. I was going to die there, I knew it. He paused, his eyes distant, seeing something Sarah could not. Michael came for me, ran through open ground, musket balls hitting all around him, cannon fire tearing up the earth. He grabbed me by the collar and dragged me back to our lines, took a bullet through the shoulder doing it, another through his side. He nearly bled out. Field surgeon wanted to cut his arm off. Michael refused, said he needed both arms to work when the war was over. Somehow he survived. Ethan's eyes focused on Sarah again. I made him a promise that day. If he ever needed me, I would come, no matter where, no matter when, no matter what, I would come. He pulled his coat tighter. I'm 17 years late, but I'm here now and I don't break promises. Not to Michael, not to anyone. Sarah felt something crack open inside her chest, something she had locked away years ago when Michael disappeared, something she had thought dead and buried. Hope, dangerous, painful, impossible to ignore. Ethan crossed back to the stove. He checked the fire, added another log, adjusted the pot. He moved with the kind of efficiency that came from years of living rough. Every motion deliberate, every action purposeful. Wasted effort was wasted energy, and energy was survival. Where will you sleep? Sarah asked. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Ethan gestured to the floor near the fire. Here, I've slept in worse places. That's not right. You should take the bed. He cut her off with a look. The bed is for you and the children. I'm fine on the floor. He pulled a bedroll from his pack, unrolled it on the planks. Then he sat, his back against the wall, rifle propped beside him within easy reach. He pulled a whetstone from his pocket and began sharpening his knife with long practiced strokes. Sarah gathered the children close. They huddled together on the one remaining pallet, wrapped in every blanket they owned. The fire crackled. The wind howled outside, but it seemed more distant now, less threatening. For the first time in days, the cold did not reach them. Daniel was asleep within minutes, his body finally relaxing now that food and warmth had returned. Mary and Tommy curled together like puppies, their breathing evening out. Sarah lay beside them, but sleep did not come. She watched Ethan across the fire. He worked on his knife for perhaps 20 minutes, testing the edge against his thumb, then returned it to its sheath. He checked his rifle, cleaned it with a cloth, loaded it, set it aside. Then he simply sat, eyes open, watching the door. "You should sleep," Sarah said quietly. "I'm fine. You've been traveling in that storm. You must be exhausted. I'll sleep later. First night in a new place, I don't sleep much anyway." Sarah propped herself up on one elbow. "How long did it take you to get here?" "From where?" "From wherever you were when you got Michael's message." Ethan was silent for a moment. "3 years," he said finally, "give or take." Sarah's breath caught. "3 years? You've been traveling for 3 years?" "No, I've been looking for 3 years. It took me a year to even find out what happened to Michael. I was in Wyoming, working cattle drives, moving around. Michael's letter took a long time to reach me. By the time I got it, he was already dead 6 months." Sarah's throat tightened. "I'm sorry," Ethan shrugged. "Not your fault. After I got the letter, I started asking questions. Took me to Butte, then Helena, then a dozen mining camps in between. Nobody wanted to talk about what happened at Granite Mountain. Everyone was scared. Finally found a miner in Butte who'd worked with Michael. Man named Carver. He was drunk. Told me things. What things?" Ethan's eyes met hers across the fire. Things that made me understand Michael didn't die in an accident. Sarah sat up fully. "What do you mean?" Ethan pulled a folded piece of paper from inside his coat. Old, creased. He handed it to her. Sarah unfolded it with shaking hands. The paper was brittle, the ink faded, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Michael's. She read, "Ethan, if you're reading this, I'm already dead. Judge Frost knows I found the proof. The contracts are forged. The land deeds are fake. He's been stealing from miners and homesteaders for years. I have evidence. I hid it. If something happens to me, find Sarah. She'll have the other half of the coin. On it is a clue. Follow it. Finish what I started. Don't let him win. Tell Sarah I'm sorry. Tell her I love her. Tell her our children were everything to me. Keep them safe, please. Your brother, Michael." The paper fell from Sarah's hands. She could not breathe, could not think. Ethan picked up the letter, folded it carefully, returned it to his pocket. "I'm here to finish it," he said quietly. "I'm here to find out what really happened to Michael. I'm here to get back what Frost stole from you. And I'm here to make sure you and these children survive." Before Sarah could respond, before she could process what she had just learned, a sound cut through the night. Hoofbeats, multiple horses, moving fast. Ethan was on his feet in an instant, rifle in hand. He moved to the window in 3 swift strides, staying to the side, peering out carefully. Sarah stood on shaking legs. "What is it?" "Riders, 6 of them." Fear spiked through her. "Who?" Ethan didn't answer. He was already moving. He checked his rifle, pulled his coat on, jammed his hat on his head. The hoofbeats grew louder, closer. Then they stopped, right outside the cabin. A voice called out. Rough, mocking, cruel. "Mrs. Brennan, come on out. Time to talk about your debt." Sarah's stomach dropped like a stone. She knew that voice. Vernon Pike, Frost's foreman, a man with a reputation for violence and no conscience whatsoever. Ethan looked at her. His eyes were calm but deadly serious. "Stay inside. Keep the children quiet. No matter what happens, you stay inside. Understand?" Sarah nodded, unable to speak. Ethan checked his revolver. Then he stepped to the door, opened it, and walked out into the snow. Sarah rushed to the window. She pressed her face against the cold glass, her breath fogging it. She could see Pike and 5 men on horseback, forming a loose semicircle around Ethan. Pike was a big man, easily 6.5 feet tall, thick through the chest and shoulders, with a beard like black wire and eyes like chips of coal. The men with him were all armed, rifles across their saddles, pistols on their hips. Ethan stood in the snow, rifle held low, but ready, relaxed, almost casual, but Sarah could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his weight was balanced. ready to move in any direction in an instant. Pike grinned. It was not a pleasant expression. Well, well, who do we have here? Mrs. Brennan got herself a protector? Ethan's voice carried clearly in the cold air. Name's Ethan Cole, and you're on private property. Pike laughed. The sound echoed off the surrounding pines. Private property? This land belongs to Judge Frost, friend. Has for 3 years now, Mrs. Brennan's husband signed the deed over when he borrowed money to work the mine. Now the widow owes us $450 plus 3 years of interest. That's $612.43. You got that kind of money on you, Cole? Ethan did not move. I want to see the contract. Pike's grin faded slightly. You calling the judge a liar? I'm saying I want to see the paper. Legal and proper. If Mrs. Brennan owes money, she'll pay what's owed. But I want to see proof of the debt. Pike's hand drifted toward the gun on his hip. You got some nerve, stranger, riding in here making demands. You got any idea who you're talking to? Ethan's voice dropped. His tone became flat. Dangerous. I know exactly who I'm talking to. A hired thug working for a man who preys on widows and orphans. Now you're going to get back on that horse and ride out of here. And you're not coming back until you have proper legal documents. One of Pike's men, a thin, weasel-faced man with nervous eyes, spoke up. We got the law on our side, mister. Judge Frost is the law in this territory. Ethan turned his head slightly, looking at the man. Not anymore, he isn't. Territorial law says a homesteader has rights. Mrs. Brennan has been on this land 4 years. That's documented. If Frost wants to claim she owes him money, he needs to prove it in front of a real judge, not a kangaroo court. Pike's face darkened. You're making a mistake, Cole. Ethan shook his head slowly. No, you're the one making a mistake. You're outstaying your welcome. For a long moment, no one moved. The horses stamped and snorted, their breath creating clouds of steam. The wind picked up again, swirling snow between the riders. Pike stared at Ethan, calculating, weighing his options. Finally, he leaned back in his saddle. All right, Cole, we'll go. For now. But we'll be back. 45 days. February 1st. If that money's not paid in full, we take the land, the house, everything, and anyone on it gets moved off, forcefully if necessary. He wheeled his horse around with unnecessary violence. The other men followed. They rode off into the darkness, hoofbeats fading into the night. Ethan stood there until the sound was completely gone, until even the echo had died away. Then he walked back inside. Sarah was waiting by the door, her whole body shaking. What did you do? What did you say to them? The next morning came clear and cold. The storm had finally passed completely. Ethan woke before dawn and stepped outside. The world was silent, pristine, white as far as the eye could see. He walked the perimeter of the property, checking for tracks, for signs of anyone watching. Found nothing but deer prints and rabbit trails. When he returned, Sarah had breakfast ready. Simple. Cornmeal mush with a bit of the honey, but hot, filling. The children ate eagerly. I'm going to scout further out, Ethan told Sarah. See if Pike left anyone behind to watch us. Take Daniel, Sarah said. He needs to learn. Daniel's face lit up. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. All right, but stay close and stay quiet. They set out an hour later, Ethan teaching Daniel to read tracks, to move quietly through snow, to use the trees for cover. They ranged perhaps a mile from the cabin, moving in a wide circle. They were examining a set of tracks near a frozen creek when Daniel suddenly grabbed Ethan's arm. Uncle Ethan, someone's watching us. Ethan's hand moved to his gun. Where? Behind that big tree. I saw movement. Ethan turned slowly. Saw nothing. Then a figure emerged from behind a massive spruce. An old man, tall despite his age, perhaps 70, white hair and long braids wrapped in otter fur, weathered copper skin marked with deep lines and old scars. He wore buckskin clothing, expertly made, decorated with beadwork, a bow and quiver across his back. He moved with surprising grace despite his years. Ethan's hand stayed on his gun, but did not draw. Daniel pressed against his side. The old man raised his hands, palms forward, empty. Peace, he said in English. His voice was deep, accented but clear. I mean no harm. You're Blackfoot, Ethan said. I am called Old Wolf. The old man lowered his hand slowly. I guided Michael Cole when he first came to this territory, 1877. I taught him to read the land, to survive the winters, to respect the mountains. Ethan's hand moved away from his gun. You knew Michael? I knew him well. Old Wolf's eyes moved to Daniel. And you carry his blood. I see it in your face, in the way you stand. You are Daniel, yes? Daniel nodded, too awed to speak. Old Wolf looked back at Ethan. And you are the brother, the one who keeps promises. Michael spoke of you often, said if anything happened to him, his brother would come, that you would be late, but you would come. How do you know I'm late? Because Michael has been dead nearly 4 years. And you arrived now when his family nearly died this winter. Old Wolf's voice held no judgment, only statement of fact. But you are here now, that is what matters. Sarah's voice came from behind them. She had followed, rifle in hand, Mary and Tommy behind her. Who are you? Old Wolf turned to her. His expression softened. Sarah Brennan. Michael's wife. I am sorry for your loss. Your husband was a good man. A brave man. Did you see him? Sarah asked, her voice breaking. Before he died? Old Wolf was silent for a long moment. Yes, he came to me 3 days before his death. He knew Judge Frost would kill him. He was not foolish. He had found proof of Frost's crimes. He knew what that meant. What did he say? Old Wolf reached into a leather pouch at his belt, pulled out a small bundle wrapped in oilcloth. He gave me this, said when his brother came, I should give it to him. Said it would show you where the truth was hidden. He handed the bundle to Ethan. Ethan unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a piece of hide, tanned deerskin. On it, drawn in faded ink, was a map. Crude but detailed. Mine shafts, tunnels, and an X marked deep in shaft number 3. Michael said the proof is in the mine, Old Wolf explained. Where he died. He carved a message into the stone, hid documents. But it is dangerous. Frost guards that mine like a dragon guards gold. Then we'll have to be careful, Ethan said. Old Wolf nodded. I will help. Frost took many things from my people. Land, water, lives. I would see him pay. Ethan looked at the old man, saw the strength beneath the age, the steel in those dark eyes. Why help us? Because Michael was my friend, and because Frost's evil spreads like poison. If you can stop him, you stop the poison. Simple, Sarah stepped forward. Will you come to our cabin? I have coffee, food. We should talk more. Old Wolf smiled, a rare expression that transformed his weathered face. Coffee I would welcome. It has been many moons since I had good coffee. They walked back together, Old Wolf moving with them like he had always been part of their group. At the cabin, he accepted coffee and a bowl of stew, ate slowly, savoring each bite. As the morning passed, Old Wolf told them more about Michael's investigation into Frost, about the miners who had disappeared asking too many questions, about the homesteaders forced off their land with forged documents, and about the mine, the layout, the guards, the best time to infiltrate. You cannot go now, Old Wolf said. Too many men, too much attention after your confrontation with Pike. But soon, when the moon is dark, in 10 days, then I will guide you, and you'll help us get in? Ethan asked. I will deal with the guards, Old Wolf said simply. You find the proof. We bring down Frost together. They agreed, made plans, and when Old Wolf left, slipping back into the forest like a smoke, Sarah felt something she had not felt in years. Hope. Real hope. Not just for survival, but for justice. Ethan watched the old man disappear. Then he looked down at the map in his hands. Michael had planned this, had known he would die, had prepared a way for Ethan to finish it. I won't let you down, brother, Ethan whispered. I promise. Ethan set his rifle down carefully. Bought us time. That's all. Time for what? Ethan pulled the broken coin from his pocket again, looked at the words etched on Sarah's half. Frost owes me. Time to find out what Frost really owes, he said, and time to make him pay. Sarah stared at him, this man who had walked out of a blizzard, this man who had fed her starving children, this man who looked so much like the husband she had lost, this man who was willing to stand up to the most powerful and dangerous man in the territory. Why, she whispered, why are you really doing this? You could walk away, take your horse and your supplies and go somewhere safe. Why risk your life for people you don't even know? Ethan met her eyes. The firelight reflected in them, making them seem to glow. Because Michael was my brother, he said simply, and because you're his family. That makes you mine too. Family protects family. Always, no matter what. He turned away, walked back to his place by the fire, sat down with his back against the wall. Sarah stood there for a long moment, trembling. Not from cold this time, from something else. Something she had not felt in years. Something like hope. Something like safety. Something like the possibility of survival. She returned to the pallet, lay down beside her sleeping children, pulled the blanket up to her chin, closed her eyes. But sleep did not come for a long time. She lay there, listening to the crackle of the fire, the soft breathing of her children, the wind outside, still howling but no longer terrifying. And beneath it all, the steady, calm presence of Ethan Cole, keeping watch through the night. Outside, the storm began to break. The clouds parted slightly. Stars appeared, cold and sharp and distant. The moon rose, casting silver light across the snow-covered landscape. The cabin stood alone in the wilderness, smoke rising from its chimney, a single point of warmth and light in an ocean of frozen darkness. Inside, Sarah Brennan closed her eyes and, for the first time in 3 years, allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they were going to survive this winter after all. The fire burned, the children slept, and Ethan Cole kept his vigil, watching over his brother's family, keeping the promise he had made 17 years ago on a blood-soaked battlefield. Dawn was still hours away, but for the first time in a very long time, dawn seemed like something worth waiting for. Morning came slow and cold. Sarah woke to the smell of coffee, real coffee, dark and bitter and impossibly precious. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. Then she opened her eyes and saw Ethan crouched by the fire, pouring the steaming liquid into tin cups. He had not slept. She was certain of that. His eyes were clear and alert, his movements precise. The fire had been tended all night, kept burning at the perfect level to provide warmth without consuming too much wood. The children were still asleep, their faces peaceful for the first time in weeks. Ethan looked up, saw she was awake. He held out a cup. Sarah sat up slowly, every muscle in her body protesting. She took the cup with both hands, savoring the warmth against her palms before bringing it to her lips. The coffee was strong enough to strip paint, exactly the way Michael used to make it. The thought sent a pang through her chest. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan nodded. He poured himself a cup and sat back against the wall. For a few minutes, neither spoke. The only sounds were the crackle of the fire and the gentle breathing of the children. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "Storm's passed. I need to check the perimeter. See what kind of shape things are in." Sarah wrapped her hands tighter around the cup. "What are you looking for? Damage? Weak points? Ways someone could approach without being seen?" "After last night, Pike knows I'm here. He'll report back to Frost. They'll come again. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But they'll come, and when they do, I want to be ready." He stood, pulled on his coat. Sarah watched him move. Every action was economical, efficient, the movements of a man who had lived hard and learned to waste nothing. Not time, not energy, not motion. "Can I help?" she asked. Ethan paused at the door. "Stay with the children. Keep them warm. Keep them fed. That's how you help." He stepped outside. Sarah heard his boots crunching through the snow, the sound fading as he moved away from the cabin. She set her coffee down and checked on the children. Tommy was still sleeping, his color better than it had been in days. Mary stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Daniel was already awake, sitting up, watching the door where Ethan had gone. "Is he really Uncle Ethan?" the boy asked quietly. "Is he really Pa's brother?" Sarah nodded. "Yes, he is." Daniel was silent for a moment. "He looks like Pa. Sounds different, but he looks the same." "Your father was a good man," Sarah said. "And so is Ethan. Why didn't Pa ever talk about him?" Sarah did not have an answer for that. Michael had been a man who kept his past locked away. She had learned not to ask too many questions. Outside, she could hear Ethan moving around the cabin, the sound of snow being cleared, wood being chopped, the rhythmic thunk of an axe biting into frozen timber. An hour passed, then another. The sun rose higher, pale and cold behind thin clouds. The light through the windows turned from gray to white. Ethan returned carrying more firewood. His face was flushed from exertion despite the cold. He stacked the wood neatly by the stove, then brushed snow from his coat. "Roof's solid," he reported. "Walls are good, but the barn needs work. One wall's starting to lean. Won't survive another heavy snow. I'll shore it up today." "The barn can wait," Sarah said. "You need to rest." Ethan shook his head. "Barn's where the horse is. Horses are way out if things go bad. Barn doesn't wait." He poured more coffee, drank it standing up. Then he headed back outside without another word. Sarah watched him go. This man was like a force of nature. Relentless. Unstoppable. She did not know whether to be grateful or terrified. By midday, the children were fully awake and demanding food. Sarah heated the leftover beans from last night, added some of the cornmeal to thicken it, and served it in small portions. The children ate slowly, carefully, their bodies remembering the sickness that came from eating too much too fast after starvation. Daniel finished first. He stood and walked to the window, staring out at where Ethan was working on the barn. "Can I help him, Ma?" Sarah hesitated. "You're still weak. I'm strong enough, please." Sarah looked at her son, 10 years old enough to know they had nearly died, old enough to want to be useful, old enough to need to feel like a man. "All right," she said, "but if you feel dizzy or sick, you come right back inside." Daniel's face lit up. He pulled on his coat, too thin for this weather, and rushed outside. Sarah watched through the window as he approached Ethan, saw Ethan stop working, turned to look at the boy, saw him nod, saw him hand Daniel a smaller hammer and show him what to do. For the next 2 hours, they worked together, man and boy, uncle and nephew, the family connection visible in the way they moved, the set of their shoulders, the stubborn determination in their faces. Sarah felt something shift in her chest. Something warm and painful and hope filled all at once. That evening, after the work was done and supper had been eaten, Ethan sat with Daniel by the fire. The boy was exhausted but glowing with pride. "You did good work today," Ethan said. "Your father would be proud." Daniel looked up at him with wide eyes. "Did you and Pa work together? Like this?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. "When we were young, yeah, he taught me everything. How to swing a hammer, how to cut wood, how to track game, how to survive." "What happened?" Daniel asked. "Why did you stop?" "The war happened," Ethan said simply. "Your father went to fight, took me with him, even though I was too young. After the war ended, things were different. We were different. We went separate ways. I kept moving. He came here, built a life. We wrote letters for a while, but eventually we stopped. Life gets in the way sometimes. Do you wish you'd come sooner?" "Every day," Ethan said. His voice was rough. "Every single day." Daniel was silent, processing this. Then he asked the question Sarah had been wondering herself. "Are you going to stay? After you help us?" Ethan looked at the boy, then at Sarah, then back to the fire. "I don't know yet," he said honestly, "but I'm here now, and I'll stay as long as you need me." Daniel nodded, satisfied with that answer. He leaned against Ethan's shoulder, his eyes drifting closed. Ethan sat very still, as if afraid to move and disturb the boy. After a few minutes, Daniel was fully asleep. Ethan carefully shifted the boy, lifting him as easily as if he weighed nothing, and carried him to the pallet, laid him down gently beside his sisters, pulled the blanket up to his chin. When he turned back, Sarah was watching him. "You're good with children," she said softly. "Had to be," Ethan replied. "I raised myself from age 6. You learn fast or you don't survive. 6 years old, my parents died. Cholera swept through our town in Pennsylvania. Killed half the population in 3 weeks. Michael was 14, old enough to work. He got a job in the coal mines. Brought me with him. I'd sleep in a corner while he worked. At night, he'd teach me letters and numbers by candlelight. Made sure I didn't grow up ignorant." Sarah's throat tightened. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Michael saved my life long before Antietam. He gave me a reason to live when I had nothing. That's a debt I can never repay, but I can honor it by keeping his family safe." He sat down across from her, the fire between them. "Tomorrow I need to go into town," he said. "Phillipsburg, it's 12 miles. I need to see if I can find any information about Michael's contract with Frost. Public records, land office, anything." "That's dangerous," Sarah said. Frost has people everywhere. I know. But we need information. We're fighting blind right now. That gets people killed. Take Daniel with you. Ethan looked at her sharply. No, he needs to learn, Sarah insisted. He needs to see how men handle things, how they stand up to bullies. You said it yourself. He did good work today. Let him keep learning. Ethan was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. All right, but he stays close to me. And if things go wrong, he does exactly what I tell him without question. Agreed. They sat in silence for a while. The fire burned low. Sarah added another log, watched the flames leap up, hungry and bright. Ethan, she said quietly, when Pike comes back, what are you going to do? Whatever I have to, he replied. His voice was hard, flat, the voice of a man who had made peace with violence a long time ago. I don't want anyone to die. Neither do I. But sometimes you don't get a choice. Sometimes the only way to protect the people you love is to become something you hate. Sarah looked at him across the fire. His face was half in shadow, the scar on his temple standing out like a brand. What did you do? She asked. After the war, Ethan's eyes were distant. Whatever paid, cattle drives, bounty hunting, hired gun a few times. Nothing I'm proud of, but I survived. That was all that mattered. And do you regret it? More than you know, he said quietly. But regret doesn't change the past. It only teaches you how to do better in the future. He stood, stretched. I'm going to take first watch. Get some sleep. You need sleep too. I'll sleep later. Right now, I need to make sure Pike doesn't come back in the night. He picked up his rifle, checked it, and moved to the window. Sarah watched him for a moment, then lay down beside her children. Despite her exhaustion, sleep was slow to come. She kept seeing Michael's face in Ethan's features, kept hearing Michael's voice in Ethan's words. It hurt. God, it hurt. But it also felt like a gift, like Michael had sent her one last piece of himself, one last chance to survive. She closed her eyes and let the darkness take her. The next morning dawned clear and bitterly cold. Ethan woke Daniel before dawn. The boy dressed quickly, excitement overcoming his exhaustion. Sarah packed them food, bread she had baked from Ethan's cornmeal, dried meat, a jar of water. Be careful, she said, pressing the bundle into Ethan's hands. Always am, he replied. He swung up onto his horse. Daniel climbed up behind him, wrapping his arms around Ethan's waist. The buckskin mare stamped, eager to move after days of standing in the barn. We'll be back before dark, Ethan said. Keep the door barred. Don't open it for anyone but me. Sarah nodded. She stood on the porch, Mary and Tommy beside her, watching as Ethan and Daniel rode off into the gray morning. They grew smaller and smaller until they disappeared into the trees. The day passed slowly. Sarah kept herself busy. She mended clothes. She cooked. She played with Mary and Tommy, trying to keep their spirits up. But her mind was elsewhere, in Phillipsburg, with Ethan and Daniel, wondering what they would find, wondering if they were safe. Meanwhile, 12 miles away, Ethan and Daniel rode into Phillipsburg. The town was small, maybe 300 people. One main street lined with wooden buildings, a general store, a saloon, a blacksmith, a small church, and at the far end, a two-story building that served as both courthouse and land office. Ethan tied his horse to the rail outside the land office. He helped Daniel down, then looked at the boys seriously. Stay close. Keep your mouth shut unless I tell you to speak. If anyone asks, you're my nephew and we're looking at buying land, understand? Daniel nodded. They went inside. The office was cramped and dusty. A clerk sat behind a desk, middle-aged and balding, with ink stains on his fingers. He looked up as they entered. Help you? He asked without much interest. Need to look at land records, Ethan said. Homestead claims in the Ruby Creek area. The clerk's eyes narrowed slightly. What for? Thinking about buying. Want to see what's available. The clerk hesitated. Then he stood and walked to a filing cabinet, pulled out a thick ledger, dropped it on the desk with a thud. Ruby Creek claims are in here. Help yourself. Ethan opened the ledger, found the entry for Sarah's land, 160 acres, filed in Michael Cole's name in March of 1879. Notation showing improvements made each year. House built, land cleared, crops planted. And then, in 1880, a new notation. Lien placed. Creditor, Clayton Frost. Amount, $450. Interest, 8% annually. Ethan stared at the entry. The handwriting was different from the previous notations. Newer. Added later. Who made this entry, he asked the clerk. The clerk came over, looked at it. Judge Frost brought the papers in himself, said Cole had signed a promissory note. Had to be recorded. You see the original document? The clerk shifted uncomfortably. Judge Frost is a respected man. If he says the debt is legitimate, it's legitimate. Ethan looked at him steadily. That's not what I asked. The clerk's face flushed. Look, mister, I don't know what you're getting at, but if you're implying Judge Frost would falsify legal documents, you're making a serious accusation. I'm not implying anything, Ethan said mildly. I'm just asking questions. Maybe you should ask them somewhere else. Ethan closed the ledger. Maybe I should. They left the office. Outside, Daniel looked up at his uncle. He's lying, the boy said. Probably, Ethan agreed, but that doesn't help us prove it. They walked down the street toward the general store. Ethan wanted to ask around, see if anyone knew anything about Michael's death, see if anyone would talk. They had gone maybe 50 yards when a voice called out behind them. Cole! Ethan stopped, turned slowly. Vernon Pike stood in the middle of the street. He was not alone. 3 men flanked him, all armed. Ethan's hand drifted toward his gun. Daniel pressed close to his side. Pike smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Fancy meeting you here. Come to town to do some shopping? Something like that, Ethan said evenly. Well, while you're here, maybe you should stop by the judge's office. He'd like a word. I bet he would. Pike's smile faded. That wasn't a request, Cole. Still sounds like one to me. The tension ratcheted up. People on the street were stopping, watching, sensing trouble. Daniel's hand found Ethan's. The boy was scared but trying not to show it. Ethan squeezed his hand gently. Then he spoke, his voice carrying clearly. Tell the judge if he wants to talk, he knows where to find me. I'm not hard to locate, but I'm not coming to him. If he's got business, he can come to me. Pike's face darkened. You're making a mistake. So you keep saying, but I'm still standing here. For now, Pike said, but that might change. Real quick, he turned and walked away. His men followed. But they kept looking back over their shoulders. Ethan waited until they were gone. Then he knelt beside Daniel. You did good, he said quietly. Staying calm, not running. That took courage. I was scared, Daniel admitted. Being scared isn't the same as being a coward. Courage is being scared and standing your ground anyway. You've got your father's guts, kid. Daniel's chest swelled with pride. They finished their business quickly. Ethan bought a few supplies at the general store, asked a few careful questions, got a few careful non-answers. Nobody wanted to talk about Judge Frost. Nobody wanted to talk about Michael Cole. Fear had a stranglehold on this town. They left Phillipsburg just after noon, rode hard for home. The sky was darkening again, more snow coming. They were perhaps 2 miles from the cabin when Ethan suddenly reined in the horse, held up his hand for silence. Daniel froze. What is it? Ethan was listening intently, hoofbeats coming up fast behind them. Ethan kicked the horse into a gallop. They flew through the trees, snow spraying up behind them. The hoofbeats grew louder, closer. Hold on tight, Ethan said. Daniel wrapped his arms around Ethan's waist and held on for dear life. They burst out of the trees into a small clearing. Ethan pulled up hard. 4 riders blocked their path. Pike's men. They had been waiting. Behind them, 2 more riders emerged from the trees. Boxed in, Ethan's mind raced. 6 men. One of him. A child to protect. Bad odds. Very bad odds. Pike rode forward slowly, grinning. Now then, Cole, let's have that talk with the judge. Daniel, Ethan said quietly, when I say run, you slide off this horse and you run for home. Fast as you can. Don't look back. Understand? But Uncle Ethan, do it. Pike was still talking. You've been causing problems, Cole. The judge doesn't like problems. Makes him cranky. Ethan's eyes scanned the clearing, looking for an opening. Any opening. Then he saw it. A gap between 2 of the riders, maybe wide enough, maybe not. Run, he said. Daniel slid off the horse, hit the ground running. One of Pike's men shouted and spurred his horse toward the boy. Ethan drew his revolver and fired. The shot went wide deliberately, but it made the rider pull up short. "Touch that boy and you're a dead man," Ethan said coldly. Pike's grin faded. "Now you've done it." The riders closed in. Ethan knew he could not fight his way out. Not without getting Daniel hurt. Not without risking everything. So he did the only thing he could. He surrendered. He dropped his revolver, raised his hands. "Smart man," Pike said. "Bring him." Two riders grabbed Ethan's arms, hauled him off the horse, threw him to the ground. One of them kicked him in the ribs. Hard. Ethan grunted but did not cry out. "Daniel," he gasped. "Run!" The boy hesitated for one terrible moment. Then he turned and ran, disappeared into the trees. Pike watched him go. Let him. He'll freeze to death before he makes it home. "Or we'll find him later," one of the other men said. Pike nodded. "Tie Cole up. We're taking him to the judge." They bound Ethan's hands behind his back, threw him onto a horse, tied his feet together under the animal's belly. Then they rode off, heading deeper into the mountains, away from the cabin. Ethan did not struggle, did not fight. He forced himself to stay calm, to think, to plan. Daniel would make it home. The boy was smart, tough. He would make it. And when he did, he would tell Sarah what happened. And Sarah would know what to do. Ethan had to believe that, had to hold on to it. Because if he lost hope now, they were all dead. Meanwhile, Daniel ran. His lungs burned, his legs ached. The cold air seared his throat with every breath. But he did not stop, could not stop. Uncle Ethan was depending on him. Ma was depending on him. Mary and Tommy were depending on him. He was the man of the family now. Pa was gone. Uncle Ethan was captured. That left him. He ran until his vision blurred, until his legs threatened to give out. He stumbled, caught himself on a tree trunk. How far? A mile? Maybe more? His hands were numb, his face burned with cold, but he pushed on. Then he heard it, a sound he knew, the deep bark of a large dog. The Harlow's Mastiff. The Harlows. Their farm was between here and home, maybe half a mile ahead. Daniel changed direction, stumbling through the drifts toward the sound. If he could reach them, they could help. They had horses. They could get him home faster. He burst out of the trees into a cleared field. There, the Harlow farmhouse. Smoke from the chimney. Mr. Harlow in the yard chopping wood. Daniel tried to shout, but his voice came out as a croak. He waved his arms, stumbled forward. Harlow looked up, saw the boy, dropped his axe and ran. "Daniel Cole? What in God's name?" The big man caught the boys. His legs finally gave out. "Son, what happened?" "They took him," Daniel gasped. "Pike's men took Uncle Ethan, going to Frost's place." Harlow's face darkened. He scooped the boy up like he weighed nothing. "Wife, get out here. We got an emergency." Mrs. Harlow appeared in the doorway, saw Daniel, and rushed forward with blankets. "Get him warm," Harlow ordered. "I'm taking him home to his ma. She needs to know." He turned to his two teenage sons who had emerged from the barn. "Saddle 3 horses, fast. We're riding to the Brennan place." Within 20 minutes, Daniel was bundled on a horse in front of Mr. Harlow, wrapped in a thick buffalo robe. Harlow's 2 sons rode alongside, all 3 armed. They covered the remaining mile and a half in less than 15 minutes. When they reached the cabin, Sarah flew out the door, saw Daniel, and nearly collapsed with relief. "He made it to our place," Harlow explained, dismounting with the boy. "Told us Pike took your brother-in-law. We brought him straight here." Sarah took Daniel, held him tight. "Thank you. Thank you so much." "Ma," Daniel said weakly, "we have to get Uncle Ethan." "They took him to Frost's." Sarah's face hardened. "I know. And we will." He staggered the last 100 yards, fell against the door, pounded on it weakly. "Ma! Ma, open up!" The door flew open. Sarah stood there, Mary and Tommy behind her. "Daniel!" She pulled him inside. "What happened? Where's Ethan?" "They took him," Daniel gasped. "Pike and his men. They took Uncle Ethan." Sarah's face went white. "Where?" "I don't know. They rode off into the mountains." Sarah's mind raced. She pulled Daniel close. "You did good. You made it home. You're safe, but Uncle Ethan—" "We'll get him back," Sarah said. Her voice was hard, determined. "We'll get him back, but how?" Sarah looked at her son, then at her daughters. Then at the rifle Ethan had left propped by the door. "We're going to get help," she said. "We're going to find people who aren't afraid of Frost. And we're going to bring Ethan home." She just had to figure out how. Night fell, the temperature dropped. Snow began to fall again, thick and heavy. And somewhere in the mountains, Ethan Cole sat bound and bleeding in a stone cellar beneath Judge Frost's estate, wondering if this was where his story ended. But he was not dead yet, and as long as he was alive, there was hope. He thought of Michael, of the promise he had made. He thought of Sarah, of Daniel's courage, of Mary and Tommy's innocent faces. He thought of family, of duty, of honor, and he made himself a new promise. He would get out of here. He would finish what Michael started. He would protect that family. No matter what it took, no matter the cost, he would keep his promise, or die trying. Outside, the wind howled, the snow fell, and the long Montana night stretched ahead, cold and dark and endless. But dawn would come eventually. It always did. And when it came, there would be a reckoning. Judge Clayton Frost sat in his study, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring into the fire. Vernon Pike stood before him, hat in hand. "Is he secure?" Frost asked without looking up. "Yes, sir. Locked in the cellar, not going anywhere." "Good." Frost took a sip of whiskey. "Did you hurt him?" "Some. Nothing permanent, yet." Frost nodded slowly. "Bring him up tomorrow morning. I want to talk to him, see what he knows, see what Michael told him before he died. And if he doesn't talk, then we'll have to convince him." Frost's voice was cold, one way or another. Pike nodded. "As you say, Judge. That's all. Get out." Pike left. Frost remained by the fire, swirling his whiskey. Michael Cole had been a problem, a man who asked too many questions, who found things better left hidden. And now his brother had come, another problem. But Frost had dealt with problems before. He would deal with this one too. One way or another, the Cole family would learn that you did not cross Judge Clayton Frost. Not and live to tell about it. He drained his glass, poured another, sat staring into the flames, planning his next move. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering tracks, hiding secrets, burying the truth beneath layers of white. But truth had a way of surfacing, eventually. And when it did, someone would pay. The only question was who. Dawn came cold and gray. Sarah had not slept. She sat by the window at all night, rifle across her lap, watching the darkness for any sign of movement. Daniel slept fitfully on the pallet, twitching and crying out in his dreams. Mary and Tommy huddled together under every blanket they owned, their small bodies seeking warmth and comfort. The fire burned low. Sarah added another log, watched the flames catch and spread. The light danced across the rough wooden walls, casting shadows that moved like living things. Ethan had been gone 14 hours. 14 hours in the hands of men who had already killed once. 14 hours of wondering if he was alive or dead. 14 hours of feeling utterly helpless. But helplessness was a luxury Sarah could not afford. Not anymore. She stood, walked to the trunk in the corner. Michael's trunk. She had not opened it in 3 years, had not been able to bear looking at his things. But now she lifted the lid with steady hands. Inside were Michael's clothes, carefully folded, his extra boots, his Bible, and beneath it all, wrapped in oilcloth, his service revolver from the war. A Colt Army Model 1860. 6 shots, heavy, deadly. Sarah lifted it out, checked the cylinder. Still loaded. Michael had always kept it loaded, just in case. She held the weapon, feeling its weight. She had fired a gun exactly once in her life, 3 years ago when a coyote had gotten into the chicken coop. She had missed, but that was before starvation, before desperation, before Ethan. Things were different now. She was different now. "Ma?" Sarah turned. Daniel was awake, watching her. "I'm going to get him back," she said quietly. "Your uncle. I'm going to bring him home." Daniel sat up. "How?" "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. Take me with you." "No. You stay here, protect your sisters." "Ma, I can help. I can shoot. Uncle Ethan taught me." Sarah looked at her kid, 10 years old. Too young for this. Too young to be holding a rifle and talking about shooting men. But Michael had been younger than that when he went to war. Ethan had been younger when he learned to survive alone. Sometimes the world did not care if you were ready. Sometimes it demanded you grow up faster than you should. All right, she said, you come with me, but Mary and Tommy stay here. We bar the door, leave them food and water. We'll be back before nightfall. What if we're not? Daniel asked quietly. Sarah met his eyes. Then Old Wolf will find them. He checks on us. He'll make sure they're safe. She hoped that was true. An hour later, as pale sunlight broke through the clouds, Sarah and Daniel set out on foot. They could not take Ethan's horse. It was too recognizable. Instead, they walked, following the tracks Ethan and his captors had left in the snow. The tracks led northeast, into the mountains, toward Granite Mountain, toward Frost territory. Sarah carried Michael's revolver tucked into her coat. Daniel carried Ethan's rifle, too large for him, but he managed it with grim determination. They walked in silence. The snow crunched under their boots. Their breath came in white clouds. The cold was brutal, but Sarah barely felt it. Her entire focus was on putting one foot in front of the other, on following the trail, on getting to Ethan. They had been walking perhaps 2 hours when they saw the smoke. A small fire, perhaps a quarter-mile ahead, just off the main trail. Sarah held up her hand. They stopped, listened. Voices, low, conversational. Sarah motioned for Daniel to stay low. They crept forward, using the trees for cover. Through the branches, Sarah could see 2 men sitting by the fire, both armed, both wearing the kind of clothes that marked them as Frost's men. Rough wool coats, sturdy boots, gun belts slung low. One of them was eating something from a tin plate. The other was rolling a cigarette. Sarah's mind raced. These men might know where Ethan was being held, but how could she get that information? She was not a fighter. She was a widow with a gun she barely knew how to use. But Daniel was already moving. Before Sarah could stop him, he stood and walked into the clearing, rifle pointed at the ground, unthreatening. The 2 men jumped up, hands going to their guns. Don't shoot, Daniel said, his voice high and scared. A perfect performance. Please, I'm lost. I've been walking all night. I'm so cold. The men relaxed slightly. Just a kid, lost in the woods. Where'd you come from, boy? One of them asked. My mom's cabin, Daniel said. She sent me to get firewood and I got turned around. I can't find my way back. Can you help me? The men exchanged glances. One of them grinned. Sure, kid. We can help. Come on over here. Warm up by the fire. Daniel walked forward slowly. The men watched him, their guard down. That was when Sarah stepped out of the trees, revolver leveled at the nearest man's chest. Don't move, she said. Her voice was steady despite the hammering of her heart. Hands away from your guns. Now. The men froze. Then the one on the left laughed. You gotta be kidding me, lady. You even know how to use that thing? Sarah pulled back the hammer with her thumb. The click was very loud in the cold air. Want to find out? The laughter died. Slowly, carefully, both men raised their hands. Daniel moved quickly, kicking their guns away from them. He kept the rifle trained on them while Sarah approached. Where is he? Sarah demanded. Sarah. Where's Ethan Cole? The men said nothing. Sarah pressed the barrel of the revolver against the first man's forehead. He was young, maybe 25, with a scraggly beard and nervous eyes. I will ask you one more time, she said, and then I will pull this trigger and ask your friend. Where is he? The young man's eyes went wide. Frost's place. The big house on Granite Mountain. There's a cellar. Stone walls, that's where they put prisoners. How many men guarding him? 2, maybe 3. How do we get in? The man hesitated. Sarah pressed harder with the gun. How? There's a back entrance, the man said quickly. Servant's door, usually unlocked during the day, goes down to the kitchen. Stairs from there lead to the cellar. Sarah stepped back. Daniel, tie them up. Daniel pulled rope from his pack. He had learned knots from Ethan. His hands were quick and sure. Within minutes, both men were bound hand and foot, gagged with strips torn from their own shirts. Sarah looked at them. If you're lying, if this is a trap, I will come back and finish what I started. Understand? Both men nodded frantically. Sarah and Daniel left them there, tied to trees, and continued up the trail. The Frost estate sat on a ridge overlooking the valley. It was the largest building Sarah had ever seen outside of Boston. 3 stories, stone and timber, smoke rising from multiple chimneys, outbuildings scattered around it, stables, storage sheds, bunkhouses for the workers. Sarah and Daniel watched from the tree line, staying hidden. There, Daniel whispered, pointing. The servants' entrance, just like the man said. Sarah studied it. The door was set into the back of the house, partially hidden by an overhang. No guards visible. But that did not mean they were not there. We wait until someone goes in or out, Sarah said. See if it's really unlocked. They waited, freezing, patient. An hour passed, then another. Finally, a woman emerged from the servant's door, middle-aged, wearing a cook's apron. She carried a bucket, walked to the well, filled it, and went back inside. The door closed behind her, but Sarah heard no sound of a lock clicking. Now, she said. They moved quickly across the open ground, staying low. Reached the door. Sarah tried the handle. It turned. They slipped inside. Found themselves in a narrow hallway. Stone floors, whitewashed walls, the smell of bread baking. Voices coming from deeper in the house. Sarah pulled out the revolver. Daniel readied the rifle. They moved down the hall, found a staircase leading down. Steep, dark, cold air rising from below. This had to be it. Sarah went first. Daniel followed. They descended into darkness. At the bottom, an other hallway. This one lined with doors, heavy wooden doors with iron bars set into them. Cells. Sarah's heart pounded. She moved from door to door, peering through the bars. Empty, empty, empty. Then, in the last cell, she saw him. Ethan sat against the far wall, his hands bound, his face bruised and bloodied. His eyes were closed. For a terrible moment, Sarah thought he was dead. Then his eyes opened, focused on her, widened in shock. Sarah, he whispered hoarsely, what the hell are you doing here? Getting you out, she said. She tried the door. Locked. She looked around frantically. There had to be a key somewhere. Daniel found it, hanging on a hook just outside the cell. He grabbed it, unlocked the door. Sarah rushed in, knelt beside Ethan. Up close, she could see the damage. His lip was split. One eye was swollen, nearly shut. His knuckles were raw and bleeding. They had worked him over thoroughly. Can you walk? She asked. Yeah. Ethan tried to stand, swayed, steadied himself against the wall. Give me a second. Daniel cut the ropes, binding his wrists with a knife. Ethan rubbed his wrists, wincing. You shouldn't have come, he said. It's too dangerous. Your family, Sarah said simply. Family doesn't leave family behind. Something shifted in Ethan's eyes. Pain, gratitude, something deeper. We need to move, Daniel said urgently, before someone realizes we're here. Ethan nodded, took the rifle Daniel offered him, checked it, smiled grimly despite his split lip. Good boy. You brought supplies. They moved back up the stairs, slowly, carefully, listening for any sound of alarm. They were halfway up when they heard footsteps above. Coming closer. Back, Ethan hissed. They retreated down the stairs. The footsteps followed, getting louder. A guard appeared at the top of the stairs, young, armed. He saw them and opened his mouth to shout. Ethan was faster. He brought the rifle up and fired. The shot was deafening in the enclosed space. The guard went down, clutching his leg, screaming. Run! Ethan shouted. They ran, back up the stairs, stepping over the wounded guard, out into the hallway. Behind them, shouts of alarm, the pounding of boots. This way, Daniel said. He had memorized the route in. They burst out the servants' door, ran for the trees. Behind them, the door flew open. Men poured out. Gunshots rang out. Bullets kicked up snow around them. Sarah felt something burn across her arm, ignored it, kept running. They reached the trees, plunged into the forest. The shooting continued, but the trees provided cover. Keep moving, Ethan gasped. Don't stop. They ran until their lungs burned, until they could no longer hear pursuit. Then they collapsed in a small clearing, gasping for breath. Sarah looked at her arm, a long, shallow gash across her bicep. Bleeding but not serious. Ethan saw it. His face darkened. You're hurt. It's nothing. Ethan pulled a bandana from his pocket, wrapped it around her arm with gentle efficiency. His hands were steady despite everything. Thank you, he said quietly, for coming for me. Sarah met his eyes. I told you, family doesn't leave family. Daniel sat nearby, watching them, a small smile on his face despite the terror they had just survived. We need to keep moving, Ethan said. They'll come after us, and now they know where you live. The cabin's not safe anymore. Then where do we go? Sarah asked. Ethan thought for a moment. Old Wolf, the Blackfoot camp. It's about 15 miles north. Frostmen won't follow us there. Too much bad blood between Frost and the tribes. Can we make it before dark? If we push hard. They pushed hard. The sun was setting when they finally reached the Blackfoot camp, a collection of hide teepees and wooden structures in a sheltered valley. Smoke rising from cooking fires, dogs barking, children playing despite the cold. An old man emerged from the largest teepee, tall, lean, white hair in long braids, weathered face marked with old scars and deep lines. Old Wolf. He looked at them, at Ethan's battered face, at Sarah's blood-stained sleeve, at Daniel's exhausted posture. Cole, he said, you look like hell. Feel like it too, Ethan replied. Old Wolf's eyes crinkled. Come, you need food, rest, medicine. They followed him into the teepee, warm, dim, the smell of whey and tobacco. Blankets on the floor, a fire in the center. Sit, Old Wolf commanded. They sat, gratefully. Old Wolf's wife, a woman nearly as old as he was, brought them bowls of stew. Thick, rich, venison and roots and herbs. They ate ravenously. While they ate, Ethan told Old Wolf everything. Michael's death, the forged contracts, Frost's lies, the capture, the escape. Old Wolf listened without interruption. When Ethan finished, the old man was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke. Frost is poison, has been for years, takes what is not his, kills those who resist. Your brother learned that. Now you learn it too. How do I stop him? Ethan asked. You need proof, Old Wolf said, real proof, not just words. You need the original documents, the ones Frost forged. You need witnesses. You need evidence that cannot be denied. Where do I find that? Old Wolf smiled, a thin, dangerous smile. I know where Michael hid his evidence. He told me before he died. Said if anything happened to him, I should tell you. When you came, and now you have come. Where? Ethan leaned forward. The mine, Old Wolf said. Granite Mountain, the place where Michael died. He carved a message into the stone. Left documents hidden in a sealed box. That is where you must go. That's suicide, Sarah said. Frost controls the mine. It's crawling with his men. Not at night, Old Wolf said. At night, the miners go home. Only 2 guards remain. I can deal with the guards. But you must go into the mine. Into the darkness. Find what Michael left. Ethan nodded slowly. When? Tonight. No sense waiting. The longer we wait, the more time Frost has to prepare. He knows you escaped. He will be expecting retaliation. Better to strike now, while he thinks you are running. Old Wolf looked at Sarah. You and the boy stay here. My wife will care for you. Cole and I go alone. No, Sarah said. I'm coming. Both men looked at her. Michael was my husband, she continued. This is my fight as much as anyone's. I'm coming. Ethan started to argue. Then he saw the look in her eyes, the same stubborn determination he had seen in Michael's eyes years ago. He nodded. All right, but you follow my lead, and if I say run, you run. No arguments. Agreed. Daniel opened his mouth to protest being left behind. Someone has to stay with Mary and Tommy, Sarah said gently. Someone has to be the man of the family while we're gone. Can you do that? Daniel swallowed his disappointment. Nodded. Yes, Ma. Good boy. They rested for 2 hours. Old Wolf provided them with warm clothes, better boots, ammunition, food. As night fell, they set out. 3 people on a mission to uncover the truth. Ethan, Sarah, Old Wolf. The temperature dropped to -30. The stars were brilliant overhead, cold and distant. Their breath came in white clouds. They reached Granite Mountain just before midnight. The mine complex was dark. Most of the buildings locked and empty, but 2 guards stood at the entrance to Mine Shaft 3, stamping their feet against the cold, rifles slung over their shoulders. Old Wolf looked at Ethan. I handle guards. You go inside. Find what you need. Be quick. How long do we have? Until someone notices the guards are gone. Maybe an hour. Maybe less. Ethan nodded. Let's do it. Old Wolf moved like a ghost. Despite his age, he was silent and deadly. He circled around behind the guards. Sarah watched, barely breathing. One moment the guards were standing. The next they were on the ground, unconscious. Old Wolf had struck so fast Sarah had not even seen him move. He dragged the guards into the shadows, bound and gagged them. Then he waved Ethan and Sarah forward. They entered the mine. The darkness was absolute. Ethan lit a lantern. The flame cast flickering shadows on the rough stone walls. Water dripped somewhere in the distance. The air was cold, but not as cold as outside. 50 degrees, maybe. Which way? Sarah whispered. Ethan pulled out the map Old Wolf had drawn. Shaft 3, 200 feet down. Turn left at the third crossbeam. Then 50 feet more. There will be a mark. An X carved into the stone. That's where Michael left his message. They walked. The mine swallowed them. The lantern light pushed back the darkness, but just barely. Sarah could feel the weight of the mountain above them, thousands of tons of rock and earth. They descended. The air grew thicker, the silence more oppressive. There, Ethan said, the third crossbeam. They turned left, counted steps. 50 feet. Ethan raised the lantern. There, on the wall, an X carved deep into the stone, and below it, words carved with a knife or chisel, rough but legible. Frost forged deed. Witness J. Baker. Proof in assay office Helena. Box behind loose stone third from bottom left. Ethan found the loose stone, pried it out. Behind it, a small metal box, rusted, sealed with wax. He pulled it out, opened it. Inside were papers, legal documents, contracts, and a journal in Michael's handwriting. Ethan flipped through it, page after page of detailed notes, dates, names, numbers, a complete record of Frost's frauds and forgeries. This is it, he breathed. This is everything. Sarah touched the journal. Michael's handwriting, the last words he had written. He knew he was going to die, she said. He knew, and he left this for us. He left it for you, Ethan corrected. To protect you, to make sure you could fight back. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she did not let them fall. Let's finish this, she said. They made their way back up, out of the mine, into the cold night air. Old Wolf was waiting, the guards still unconscious. You found it? He asked. Ethan held up the box. Everything we need, then we go. Now, before they wake. They ran, back through the forest, back toward the Blackfoot camp. They were a mile from the mine when they heard the alarm. A bell ringing, shouts, the sound of horses. They're coming, Old Wolf said. Move faster. But Sarah stumbled, her exhaustion catching up. She went down hard, twisting her ankle. Ethan doubled back, pulled her up. Can you walk? I'll have to. He slung her arm over his shoulder. They moved as fast as they could, but it was not fast enough. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew closer. Old Wolf stopped. Go, he said. Take her. Get to the camp. I will slow them down. You can't fight them all, Ethan said. Old Wolf smiled. I do not need to fight. I just need to delay. Go. Now. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Thank you. Thank your brother. He was a good man. Finish what he started. Old Wolf turned and melted into the shadows. Ethan and Sarah ran. Behind them, gunshots, shouts, the sounds of a fight, then silence. Sarah's heart clenched, but she did not look back. Could not look back. They reached the camp, found Daniel waiting with Mary and Tommy, safe, warm, alive. Ethan collapsed. Sarah collapsed beside him. They lay there gasping, the metal box clutched between them. Where's Old Wolf? Daniel asked, looking past them into the darkness. His voice was small, frightened. Ethan's face went dark. He stayed behind. Bought us time, is he? Daniel couldn't finish the question. Before anyone could answer, a commotion erupted at the edge of camp. Shouts in Blackfoot, warriors running toward the trees. A group of 4 Blackfoot men emerged from the forest, carrying someone between them on a makeshift stretcher of pine branches and blankets. Old Wolf. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. The old man was covered in blood, his shirt torn and soaked, but his eyes were open, alert, alive. They carried him quickly into his teepee. His wife, a woman nearly as old as he was, cried out and rushed to his side, began barking orders in Blackfoot. 2 younger women ran to help. Old Wolf waved weakly at Ethan. You got it? Ethan knelt beside the stretcher, held up the metal box. Everything. Because of you. Old Wolf managed to smile. Blood stained his teeth. Good. Worth it then. How bad? Ethan asked one of the warriors who had carried him. The warrior, a man of perhaps 40 with a scarred face, spoke in halting English. 2 bullets, shoulder and side. Much blood. But he is strong, like his name. He will live. The tribe's medicine man, an ancient figure with a face like carved wood, pushed everyone out except Old Wolf's wife and the 2 helper women. He began working immediately, his hands sure despite their age. Ethan stood outside the teepee all night, refusing to sleep. Sarah sat beside him, wrapped in a blanket, holding his hand. He'll live, she whispered. He's too stubborn to die. Like someone else I know, Ethan said quietly. At dawn, the medicine man emerged, wiped blood from his hands in the snow, looked at Ethan. He will live. The bullets are out. Wounds are clean. He is strong, will walk with pain. But we'll walk. Can I see him? The medicine man nodded. Ethan entered the teepee. Old Wolf lay on a bed of furs, his torso wrapped in bandages stained with something dark and pungent. His wife sat beside him, holding his hand. Old Wolf's eyes opened. You should be going to town, getting that proof to the marshal. We will. I wanted to make sure you were alive first. Takes more than Frost's dogs to kill this old wolf. He tried to laugh, winced instead. Go. Finish it. For Michael. Ethan gripped the old man's hand. Thank you. For everything. Thank Michael. He was the one who trusted me first. When this is over, I'll come back. Check on you. I will be here. Probably complaining about these women fussing over me. Old Wolf's eyes drifted closed. Go now. Before I fall asleep and you waste more time. Ethan left the teepee. Sarah was waiting. He'll live, Ethan said. Tough old bastard. Now we finish it, Sarah said. Now we finish it. But first they had to rest. They had been running on pure adrenaline and will. Now their bodies demanded payment. They slept. Deep. Dreamless. Exhausted. When Sarah woke, the sun was high. She sat up, wincing at the pain in her ankle. Daniel was sitting beside her. Uncle Ethan's gone, he said quietly. Sarah's heart stopped. Gone where? To town. To Phillipsburg. He took the evidence. Said he was going to the marshal. Going to end this. When did he leave? Before dawn. Sarah struggled to her feet. Why didn't he wake me? He said you needed rest, and that this was something he had to do alone. Sarah grabbed her coat. Like hell it is. Ma, you can't even walk. Then I'll crawl if I have to. She looked at her son. Stay here with your sisters. I'm going after him. Mom, Daniel, stay here. The boy fell silent, nodded. Sarah limped out of the teepee. One of the Blackfoot women brought her a horse, helped her mount despite her injured ankle. Sarah rode, hard, ignoring the pain. The horse was strong and fast. She made good time. She reached Phillipsburg just after noon. Rode straight to the marshal's office, tied the horse outside, limped in. The marshal sat behind his desk, middle-aged, gray beard, tired eyes, and across from him, Ethan. The metal box open on the desk between them. Ethan looked up, saw Sarah. His eyes widened. You should be resting. So should you, she said. The marshal cleared his throat. Mrs. Brennan, I've been reviewing this evidence your friend brought. Sarah nodded, her hand finding Ethan's. If it's genuine, it's damning. Judge Frost has been operating a criminal enterprise for years. It's genuine, Ethan said. My brother died to protect it. I believe you, the marshal said. But Frost is powerful. He has connections, money, influence. Taking him down won't be easy. Then what do you suggest? Sarah demanded. The marshal pulled out a piece of paper, started writing. I'm sending a telegram to the territorial governor in Helena. I'm requesting federal marshals. I'm formally charging Clayton Frost with fraud, forgery, theft, and murder. And I'm asking for an immediate warrant for his arrest. He looked up at them. But I need you both to testify in court, under oath. Are you willing? Yes, Sarah and Ethan said together. The marshal nodded. Then let's finish this. 2 days later, federal marshals arrived. 6 men, hard-faced, armed. They rode to the Frost estate with the marshal and Ethan. Sarah wanted to go. Ethan refused. This could get ugly, he said. I won't risk you getting hurt. I've been hurt already, Sarah countered. And I won't let it happen again. They stared at each other. Then Sarah sighed. Fine. But you come back. You hear me? You come back in one piece. I hear you, Ethan said softly. He rode out with the marshals. Sarah watched from the porch of the cabin, Daniel beside her. They waited. Hours. The sun tracked across the sky. Finally, just before sunset, riders appeared. Ethan in front, behind him, the marshals. And in the middle, hands bound, Judge Clayton Frost. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. An old man on a horse, heading to prison. As they rode past, Frost looked at Sarah. Their eyes met. He opened his mouth to speak. Sarah turned away. He did not deserve her words, did not deserve her time. He had taken enough already. The marshals took Frost to the territorial prison in Deer Lodge. He would stand trial in the spring. But everyone knew the outcome. The evidence was overwhelming. Justice finally had come to Montana territory. That night, Sarah and Ethan sat by the fire, the children asleep, the cabin warm and safe. What will you do now? Sarah asked. When this is over? Ethan was quiet for a long time. I don't know. I've been running for so long. Never had a place to stay. Never had a reason. You have a reason now, Sarah said. She reached out, took his hand. If you want one. Ethan looked at their joined hands, then at her face. Are you asking what I think you're asking? I'm saying we need you. The children need you. I need you. Sarah's voice was steady. I'm saying I'd like you to stay. Not out of obligation. Not because of Michael. But because I want you here. Because I... She trailed off, unable to say the words. Ethan said them for her. Because you love me? Sarah nodded. Yes. Because I love you. Ethan pulled her close, kissed her, gentle, tender, full of promise. I love you too, he whispered. And I'll stay, as long as you'll have me. Always, Sarah said, always. Outside, snow began to fall, but inside, the fire burned bright and warm. Spring came early that year. The snow melted, grass grew green, flowers bloomed. Sarah and Ethan were married in May, a small ceremony. Just family and friends. Old Wolf stood as witness, his face solemn but his eyes twinkling. Daniel stood beside Ethan. Mary and Tommy held hands, giggling. Sarah wore a simple white dress. Ethan wore his best clothes, the Union cavalry badge pinned to his chest. They spoke their vows, promised to love and honor, to stand together through whatever came. And when the preacher said, you may kiss your bride, Ethan did, long and deep and full of joy. The children cheered. Old Wolf nodded his approval. And somewhere Sarah felt Michael's presence, watching, smiling, at peace. 6 months later, Sarah gave birth to a daughter. They named her Jessie, for the brother Ethan had lost, for the promise that had brought him here. Ethan held the baby with shaking hands, looked down at the tiny face, and wept. Tears of joy, of gratitude, of redemption. He had kept his promise to Michael. He had protected the family. He had found a home, and in doing so, he had saved himself. Epilogue. 24 years later, an old man sat on the porch of a prosperous ranch house, watching the sun rise over the Montana mountains. Ethan Cole, nearly 60 years old now, silver-haired, weathered by time and hard work, but still strong, still steady. Beside him, Sarah, gray streaked through her hair, laugh lines around her eyes, her hand resting on his. Behind them, the house was full. Daniel and his wife and their 4 children, Mary and her husband and their 3, Tommy and his new bride, Jessie and her fiancé. 3 generations, all together, all safe, all loved. Old Wolf had passed 5 years ago. He had lived to see 84, had died peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by family. Judge Frost had died in prison, alone, unmourned. Vernon Pike had fled west, died in a knife fight in California. No one came to claim the body. But the Coles had lived, had prospered, had built something lasting. And now, as the sun rose on another day, Ethan thought about the promises that had brought him here. The promise to Michael, kept. The promise to Sarah, kept. The promise to himself, to find a home, to find peace, to find love, all kept. Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder. What are you thinking about? Everything. Ethan said. Nothing. Just how lucky I am. We're the lucky ones, Sarah said. You saved us, Ethan shook his head. No, you saved me. You gave me a reason to stay, a reason to live, a reason to be better than I was. Then we saved each other. Yeah, Ethan agreed. I guess we did. The sun climbed higher. The day began. The family stirred inside. But for just a moment more, Ethan and Sarah sat together, holding hands, watching the light spread across the land they had fought so hard to keep, the land that was theirs, free and clear, forever, and they were content.